Chapter 1. Born beneath the twin suns, without a father, he was not born. He was summoned. Listen, listen closely. This is not the story they told. This is not the myth they carved in light. This is the other version, the one buried in dust, spoken only in ruins, whispered by the Force itself, where it coils in shadow. He was born beneath twin suns, but he did not belong to them. His name was Anakin, but that is not what the Force called him. The Force did not call him anything, because the Force does not speak in names. It speaks in wounds. The world was Tatooine, a grave of sand, a desert without mercy. Twin suns burned the sky. They watched. The weak suffer and did nothing. Slaves crawled through the dust, bought, sold, forgotten among them. A woman, Shmi, she bore a child, but there was no father. When asked, she simply said, "There was no father." She told the truth, and a lie, because he was conceived, not by man, but by imbalance, by the Force, or what was left of it. He was not born, he was summoned, a convergence, a spike in the current, a reply to a question no living thing ever asked. The boy grew. He built machines from broken parts. He raced pods faster than the wind. He smiled, but only for her. Inside him, something stirred, something ancient. It waited. He did not know what it was, but it knew him. Then the Jedi came. Robes, lightsabers, peace, they said. But war followed behind them like a shadow. Jin saw the boy, and he felt the weight. The Force wrapped around Anakin like a storm. They tested his blood, and the numbers shattered expectation. Over 20,000. Not even Yoda had such a count. The Force whispered through his cells. It screamed. Qui-Gon believed. He said, "He is the chosen one." He spoke those words to the Council. But the Council did not trust the storm. They saw danger. They saw fear. But they were bound by prophecy, and prophecy does not ask permission. The boy raced for his freedom. Engines roared like beasts. Metal sang across the canyon walls. He did not win with luck. He did not win with hope. He won because the Force willed it. He was unafraid, because something inside him had never feared death. He left the sand behind, but not his mother. She remained in chains, and so did part of him. He stood before the Jedi Temple, high towers, cold stone, a place of rules and silence. They called him too old, too angry, too full of shadow, but they allowed him to stay, not because they trusted him, but because destiny gave them no choice. They believed they could teach him, shape him, control him. They were wrong. He missed his mother every night. He dreamed of sandstorms. He dreamed of blood. He dreamed of chains that reached through time. And in the corners of the Force, something else dreamed with him. He was a boy, a slave, a pilot, a learner, a storm. He was not chosen by the light, nor the dark. He was chosen by the wound in between. And beneath twin suns, one light grew, and the other began to die. Chapter 2. The dream of freedom and the lie of the Jedi. What they offered was peace. What they gave was war. He was taken from one prison into another. No chains, no walls, no slavers with buzzing collars, but a prison of silence, a prison of discipline, of rules written in stone and arrogance, of detachment carved as doctrine. The temple, it stood like a monolith against the stars, a tower of light, but not warmth. There the boy learned the code, not love, not compassion, not grief, only control, only denial. He missed his mother. But that feeling was forbidden. He feared losing her. That too was forbidden. The Jedi taught him to be less afraid, less attached, less alive. They gave him a master. Obi-Wan, young, loyal, dutiful, still grieving the death of his own. He did not choose Anakin. Anakin was forced upon him. The will of a dying master, the echo of prophecy. Obi-Wan tried to mold the boy. He taught him the forms, the blade, the meditations, the silence. But the boy's spirit was fire, and fire does not meditate. Fire consumes. It remembers what was taken. The council watched him, with curiosity, with fear. Yoda, ancient and weary, said, "Much fear in him, I sense." They nodded, and did nothing, because they needed the prophecy to be true. They needed balance. But they did not understand the cost. And the boy, he dreamed. He dreamed of her, his mother, still bound, still waiting, still suffering. But the Jedi said, "Let go," they said. Attachment leads to fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. But they forgot. The boy had already suffered. He was born in suffering. It was not a path for him. It was home. Years passed. He grew into power, too quickly, too easily. He mastered techniques meant for masters. His blade moved like thought. His instincts whispered things the Jedi did not teach. He saw flashes of what would come, death, fire, screams without faces. The council ignored them. They called them dreams, but they were not dreams. They were the Force bleeding forward, dripping into his mind like oil. Heavy, hot. True, he met a queen. Now a Senator Padme, the one from the desert days. The one who remembered him before prophecy, before pain got to her. He was not a weapon, not a threat. Just Anakin, just a boy. Now grown, he loved her, and she returned it. Quietly, desperately, dangerously. But love was forbidden, so it became secret. And secrets rot when left in silence. Then came the vision. Not a dream, a prophecy wrapped in fear. His mother, dying, calling his name from across the stars. And he knew she was still a slave, still in chains, still in pain. The Jedi would not help, so he went alone, to the sand, to the graveyard of suns. He found her, too late. Her eyes opened once more, only to see him, only to whisper, "I'm complete now." Then silence, then stillness. The Force trembled. Something broke. A scream buried in blood. He hunted the ones. Who took her? Not with a blade, but with rage. He did not kill them. He ended them, every one, even the children. The Force recoiled. But it did not stop him, because some wounds are stronger than laws. He returned to the Jedi, but the Jedi could not see what he carried. They saw only a knight, a chosen one, a tool for balance, not the broken child. Inside the armor of prophecy, they told him to let go, again and again. But the letting go was killing him, piece by piece. And the dream of freedom, the dream of light. It was fading, replaced by silence, by shadows, by questions the Jedi would not answer. Why must love be hidden? Why must pain be buried? Why must peace feel so much like cold? And in the hollow halls of the Jedi, the first crack formed in the myth. Chapter 3 War. And the whisper of a new masterpiece was a lie. The war only proved it. The galaxy burned, not suddenly, not without warning, but with the slow collapse of reason, the crumbling of peace beneath the boots of clones, and the whispers of fear. The Clone Wars began, and with them, the end of the Jedi had already taken root. They did not see it, or would not, because war makes gods of fools, and fools of prophets. The Jedi became generals. Knights turned to soldiers. Meditation gave way to strategy. The blade, once used for peace, now fed itself on blood, and Anakin thrived. He moved through battle like a blade, through mist, fearless, reckless, victorious. His troops called him a hero, a savior, the chosen one made flesh. But the Force, it whispered something else, something colder. Pom watched him return from war again and again, each time more silent, more distant, more scarred. He smiled. But the smile no longer reached his soul. He had seen too much, and what he saw, he buried deep. They lived in shadows, a love hidden behind doors, whispers in corridors, hands held in secret. She told him they were expecting a child, and his heart trembled with joy, with fear, with the memory of loss. He saw her death, again and again, in visions, in dreams. In the cold language of the Force, he saw her die, and he could not bear it. Not again, not like his mother. The Jedi could not help. They offered only silence, and silence was a prison. But another voice reached him, a voice old and patient, a friend of the Republic, a man called Palpatine, the Chancellor, respected, wise, trusted. He had watched Anakin for years, not as a Jedi, but as something else, something becoming. He spoke of power, not to control others, but to save those he loved. He told a story, a myth, a legend carved into Sith stone. Darth Plagueis the Wise, who could prevent death, but not his own. Anakin listened. The words fell into his mind like seeds into fertile fear. The Jedi said it was heresy. The Jedi said it was impossible. But the Jedi also said his dreams were meaningless, that fear was a weakness, and yet his fear had never been wrong. Palpatine promised no doctrine, only power. The power to save Padme, the power to stop death. But he gave nothing yet, only the whisper, only the offer. And that is how the darkness begins, not with thunder, but with a whisper. The council grew suspicious, not of the Sith, but of Anakin. They saw his closeness to the Chancellor. They feared it. They resented it. They asked him to spy. They made him betray the man who trusted him. They made him doubt everything. He stood between two orders, two creeds, two lies. The Jedi who spoke of peace while drowning in war, and the Sith who spoke of power without shame. The Force grew louder. It split inside him. One half cried out for light, the other for control. Padme's breath, her smile, her unborn child, all of it, balanced on prophecy, and prophecy does not sleep. There was one more wound, one more breaking of the sacred order. Anakin's closest bond, Ahsoka, his apprentice. She was accused, abandoned, cast out by the council, and when proven innocent, they welcomed her back with pride, as if nothing had happened. She refused. She left, and in her leaving, Anakin saw the truth. The Jedi would not save those they loved. They would sacrifice them. In the name of order, he loved her like a sister. He let her walk away. Something cold grew in his chest, a question that had no answer. Why save a galaxy that does not know how to love? And as the war thundered on, he looked to the darkness, not as a fall, but as a doorway. Chapter 4: The Fall of the Temple. The rise of the mask. He did not fall. He was pushed. The end began in silence, not with an army, not with fire, but with a whisper in a chamber, a secret revealed too late. The Chancellor was not what he claimed. He was no mere man, no guardian of peace. He was the Sith, the last, the patient, the spider in the center of the web, Darth Sidious. He had waited for decades, not with armies, but with promises, with slow corruption, with hands dipped in politics and prophecy. And Anakin was the key, the final piece, the door he needed to open fully. The council suspected. Too late, they moved against him. Mace Windu, blade in hand, confronted the darkness, demanded its end, but the Sith would not die so easily. Lightning danced from his fingers, the Force bent to his scream, and Anakin arrived at the edge. At the moment where all paths meet, Windu stood over Sidious, ready to strike, to end it, to restore balance. But balance, as Anakin understood it now, meant sacrifice. And he saw Padmé. He saw her dying. He saw the Jedi letting it happen, as they had with his mother. And so he chose. He chose not the dark, but the lie that love could be preserved by any means. He struck. The blade fell. Windu died, and so did Anakin Skywalker. What remained rose in silence. Sidious called him Darth Vader, a name not born but forged, a title carved from betrayal, a crown of Ashdot. Vader knelt, but not in loyalty. In desperation, he said, "I will do whatever you ask. Just help me save her." Sidious smiled. He gave no promise, only commands. The Jedi Temple, once sacred, once proud, now a tomb. Vader marched its halls, not with grief, but with duty. The younglings ran to him, trusted him. He lit his blade, and history shuddered. He did not weep, because the one within him who could was gone. Across the stars, Order 66 was spoken. A code, a death chant. The clones turned, the Jedi fell. One by one, hundreds. Some begged, some fought, all died. The Force trembled, as if screaming without sound, as if mourning its own children. And Sidious stood before the Senate, cloaked in shadow, speaking of treason, of Jedi lies, of empire. Thunderous applause followed him. They welcomed tyranny as salvation watched it unfold. The Republic dying, the Jedi vanishing, her husband missing. She found him, but he was not the man she loved, not anymore. His eyes burned gold, his breath came hard. He spoke of control, of power, of saving her by ruling everything. She recoiled. Heartbreaking, and in her pain, he saw betrayal. He gripped her throat, tight, trembling. Obi-Wan intervened. Too late, Padmé collapsed. Anakin roared, but not in grief, in rage, because he believed he had been denied his purpose. The duel began. Master and student, brother and brother, on the river of fire. Blades screamed, words fell like stones. Obi-Wan said, "You were the chosen one." But prophecies do not weep, and chosen ones are never spared. Vader fell, burning, screaming, left to die on blackened stone. His limbs gone, his body shattered, his eyes full of smoke. Obi-Wan turned away. Tears without victory. Sidious arrived. He found the ruin. He took it, not to heal, but to shape. Machines replaced flesh. Metal replaced pain. Breath became labor. A mask descended. Black, cold. Final, Darth Vader rose. But not as a man, as a wound, walking, breathing. Unending, he asked one thing. Is she safe? Sidious lied. Said, you killed her. And the scream that followed shattered what remained of the force within him. And so the temple burned, and the mask rose, and hope was buried beneath ash. Chapter 5. The Tyrant's Breath. The galaxy's silence. He was no longer Anakin. He was hunger in armor. He rose in black. Not with triumph, but with weight. The armor was not freedom. It was a tomb. The lungs hissed. The mask sealed. And Darth Vader walked. Each step echoed with loss. Each breath was a punishment. Each movement a reminder. Anakin Skywalker was dead, and in his place was something worse. A wound that would not heal. A shadow made flesh. The Jedi were gone, their temple ash, their teachings scattered, their future erased. Vader became the blade of the Empire. Sidious ruled, but it was Vader who enforced, who hunted, who broke. The galaxy learned his name in fear. Worlds whispered of a black shape descending from orbit, of fire, of silence, of no survivors. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his voice came from a machine. Cold, final, unyielding, he hunted the survivors, the Jedi who slipped through the cracks. Those who still dared to hope, he tracked them, he found them, he extinguished them, one by one. But not all light was gone. In secret corners of the galaxy, children were born. Force-sensitive, untouched by war. The Inquisitorius was born. Dark Jedi trained in cruelty. Not Sith, but predators. Vader led them, taught them pain, taught them silence. But deep within, he hated them because they were not strong. They were not her. They were not him. He returned once to Tatooine, not to visit, not to mourn, but to destroy the past. He stood beneath twin suns, and for a moment, he remembered a boy who once dreamed of the stars. Then he buried it, beneath sand, beneath breath, beneath the mask. Years passed, galaxies shifted, but he did not change. The armor kept him alive, but not whole. He dreamed of fire, of her, Padme, smiling, then fading, and always. His hands were the ones that let her fall. Sidious ruled with cruelty, with fear, with deception. Vader ruled with presence. With pain, he did not shout. He did not debate. He arrived, and silence followed. No general disobeyed twice. No officer failed twice. No mercy lived behind the mask, but deep beneath the surface. An ember still glowed, faint, flickering. He did not speak of it. He did not name it, but sometimes, in the cold of hyperspace, he would reach out into the Force, searching, yearning, bleeding, for what he did not know, perhaps, for forgiveness, perhaps. For death, the galaxy accepted its chains, because it had forgotten how to fight, and Vader was its executioner. But the Force is not quiet forever, and prophecy, once cast, does not die. Somewhere, in silence, a child had been born, a child with his blood, a child with her hope, and the dark shuddered. And so the tyrant breathed, but within the breath something stirred. Chapter 6. Twins. And the seed of rebellion from ruin came life, and the shadows stirred with fear. Padme Amidala died, but not before the galaxy changed forever. Her last breath carried two names, spoken in sorrow, wrapped in love: Luke. Leia. Twins, born into war. Born of a father lost to flame, and a mother broken by love. They did not cry for long. The Force silenced them, cradled them, marked them, not as victims, but as balance yet to come. They could not stay together. The dark would find them. The shadow would seek them, so they were split. Divided like star from moon, Leia to royalty. Adopted by House Organa, raised in wealth, in politics, in secrecy. Luke to desert. Taken to the Lars homestead, raised as a farmer, hidden in plain dust, 2 lives, 2 paths, unaware of the storm that bound them. Vader did not know Sidious had hidden the truth, a cruel mercy, a calculated lie. He believed she died with her unborn child, and in that lie he buried his soul. No child, no son, no reason to look back, only the mask, only the mission, only the endless breath of hate. But the Force remembers. It does not forget its threads. And it began to weave. A flicker here, a resistance there, sparks catching in the dry fields of oppression. The rebellion was not born in war. It was born in silence, in the corridors of fear, in whispered meetings, in hidden messages, in stolen plans. Leia became its face, a senator by day, a firebrand by night. She wore courage like armor, and her words were weapons. She had never met her mother, but in every breath Padmé lived again. Luke, he dreamed. He looked to the stars, felt them pull, felt something ancient moving beneath his skin. He fixed machines with ease. He shot with impossible precision. And sometimes the desert whispered his name, but he did not yet know what he was, only that he was. Waiting. Vader moved through these years like a shadow through glass. The galaxy feared him, but he feared nothing except memory, except silence. In the silence, she still spoke, her voice a wound. He searched for Jedi survivors, still, even now. He could not stop, not just to obey the Emperor, but to destroy the past, to end what he once believed. But the Force did not obey him. It stirred, it watched, it grew stronger in the very places he burned. And then a name appeared, Skywalker, a pilot, on the edge of the rebellion. Too skilled, too connected. The name should not have existed. It echoed like prophecy, like threat. Vader heard it, spoke it aloud within the prison of his helmet. Skywalker, a ghost's whisper, a lie, a warning, or was it a son? And so the seeds awakened. In the desert, in the palace, in the stars, and the Force began to rise again. Chapter 7. The Boy, the Blade, and the Death Star. A blade lost, a blade found, and the fire begins again. The galaxy groaned beneath the weight of tyranny. The Empire stood unchallenged. Its fleets stretched across the stars, cold and endless. But, deep in the silence, a station was born. Not a weapon, a judgment, a fortress of death, the Death Star, a moon-sized terror, forged from fear, powered by cruelty, built to erase hope from the sky, and above it all, Darth Vader, its shadow, its enforcer, its breath. But on a barren world of sand, destiny stirred. Luke Skywalker, still a boy, still a dreamer, but the Force called to him. He found an old man in the wastes, a hermit, a ghost, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi who had once called him brother, the one who left Anakin burning. He had hidden himself, not out of fear, but out of duty, to watch the child, to wait, and now the time had come. Leia's message arrived, hidden in a droid. A call for help, a spark. Kenobi knew the moment it had returned. The tide turned, the Force moved. He gave the boy a blade, blue, ancient. His father's, not a weapon, a legacy, a burden. Luke held it, unknowing, unready. But the Force does not wait for readiness. They fled, left the desert, watched it burn behind them. Death, no warning. The Empire had reached Tatooine, and Vader's hand was not far. They boarded the Falcon, a smuggler's ship. A pirate's ride, Han Solo, Chewbacca, scoundrels drawn into prophecy. The threads tangled, and the Force watched and waited. The Death Star captured them, a trap, a maze, a grave. But Luke began to awaken. He moved with instinct, with purpose, with a fire he did not yet understand. They freed Leia, a sister he did not yet know, and in the dark halls of steel, Obi-Wan met the mask. Vader, once brother, now executioner, they fought, but not as they once had, not with fury, but with fate, and Obi-Wan chose surrender, not defeat, but transcendence. His blade faded, his body vanished. Luke screamed, and in that scream the Force pulsed. Pain awakened power. They escaped, but not untouched. Luke carried loss, Leia carried fire, and the rebellion knew its hour had come. They had the plans, the key to the Death Star, the hope of survival, but the cost had only begun. Vader stood over the empty robe, where Kenobi had vanished. No corpse, no victory, only the past, escaping him again. But he felt it, the tremor, the boy, the name, Skywalker. And so the blade passed on, and the sun rose. And in the shadow of death, the war awakened. Chapter 8. The Death Star falls, but the darkness remains. One weapon shatters, but the will that forged it endures. The Death Star loomed, a hollow god of steel, feared, invincible, absolute. The rebellion stood before it, fragile, fractured, barely a whisper against the storm. But rebellion is not metal. It is spirit, and the Force had chosen a vessel, Luke Skywalker, young, afraid, but willing. He flew not with skill alone, but with destiny clutched in shaking hands. Obi-Wan was gone, yet not gone. His voice came in stillness. Use the Force. Luke listened. He closed his eyes, let go, and in that silence he heard everything. The Force guided his hand. The shot was fired. A thread of light through the void. The Death Star broke, exploded, screamed. A silence devoured its scream. A world of voices erased in fire. The galaxy gasped. Hope ignited. The tyrant's god had fallen, but not the tyrant. Vader survived, spinning into shadow, cast away by fate, not destroyed, only delayed. He sat alone in his fighter, staring into stars that once carried her voice, and in the silence the name returned. Skywalker, he told the Emperor, spoke the name with restraint, with ice. But inside a storm churned. A son, hidden, lied about, living. Sidious responded, not with fear, but with hunger. He could be turned. Vader said nothing, but inside, a fracture. Was this his chance? To reclaim something lost? To erase pain by shaping legacy? Or to destroy the only echo of who he once was. The rebellion celebrated, but war had only begun. Leia stood as leader, Luke as symbol, Han reluctant yet bound, Chewbacca eternal guardian, droids whispering secrets. They had won a battle, not the war, and the Empire was not gone, only wounded, and wounded beasts are most cruel. Luke trained, alone, guided by memory, by whispers, by pain. He did not yet know what Vader truly was, what the blade he held had once done, that he held the sword that ended children, that burned temples, that killed the man who gave it. The Force did not weep, it watched, balanced on a blade, and somewhere Vader began to search, not as enforcer, but as seeker, for the boy, for the truth, for something unnamed. A feeling he had buried, now returned as a wound. The weapon shattered, but the hand that forged it still closed around the galaxy's throat. And in that closing grip, a heartbeat began to rise. Chapter 9 Dagobah. And the ghost of the war. Not all wars end. Some sleep in mud and dream. The Force called, not with sound, but with weight, with gravity beyond reason. Luke followed it, fled the noise, fled the war to a forgotten place, a wound in space, a swamp world, dark and breathing. Dargo, no cities, no stars, only rot, only roots, only silence. But the Force was alive there, thick, heavy, curdled, not light, not dark, both, neither. Everything he wandered. The boy, the seed of prophecy, and then the voice, not loud, not deep, but ancient, mocking, playful, and hiding terror. Yoda, Jedi Master, General, survivor of the Great Purge, once proud, now broken, now cloaked in exile and moss. He looked small, but the Force trembled in him. He tested Luke, mocked him, measured his hunger, his fear, his impatience, and in those flaws saw Anakin again. He did not want to train him, not another, not the son, but destiny is not polite. It does not ask, it claims, and so he began to teach, to unmake, to prepare. Luke learned how to lift stone, how to listen, how to feel, but not enough. Never enough. The fear remained. The anger stirred. The questions burned. Why couldn't I save him? Why didn't you fight Vader? What if I'm not ready? And the Force answered, with silence. One day, the cave called, a place within Dagobah where the dark pooled. A nexus, a scar. Yoda warned him, only what you take with you. Luke entered, alone, blade drawn, heart racing. The cave answered with vision. Not lie, not truth. Something in between. Vader stepped from shadow. Luke struck, the mask fell, but beneath it, his own face, not a warning, a mirror. He left the cave shaken, fractured, unready. Above, the swamp, in distant stars, his friends suffered. Leia Han, tortured, hunted, bait, a trap laid by the Emperor, sprung by Vader. The Force told him not to go, Yoda warned. Obi-Wan whispered, but the boy had his father's fire, and fire does not wait. He left, alone, unfinished, unforged. But destiny does not wait for the forged. It devours them all the same. And in the mud of an ancient world, a truth slept, waiting, watching, and it knew. The fall was not over. Chapter 10 Beneath the mask. The father waits, the hunter becomes the mirror. The son becomes the question, and the mask breathes. Clouds boiled above Bespin, a city that floated, elegant, isolated, a haven of gas and luxury, now turned to bait. Vader had foreseen it. The Emperor had whispered it. The trap was set. Han Solo, Leia Organa, Chewbacca, tortured not for information, but for pain. Pain strong enough to echo through the Force, to reach the boy, to pull him from his path and into the jaws of fate. Luke came, alone, unfinished, burning, not with wisdom, but with desperation. The halls of Cloud City were silent as tombs. He passed metal and mist, closer, closer, until he met him, Vader, towering, still, masked like a god's tombstone. There were no greetings, only blades, blue against red. Skywalker against Skywalker, father against son, though one did not know it. The duel was not a battle, it was a lesson, a ritual, a stripping of hope. Vader toyed with him, measured his form, felt the anger beneath. He remembered it. He remembered being that boy, that wild strike, that desperation to be strong enough. But now he was the wall the boy could not pass. They clashed in silence, metal against memory, flesh against fate. Luke fought well, too well, and that frightened Vader, excited him. This one was strong, perhaps stronger, perhaps enough. Then came the fall, a blow, a scream, a severed hand. The saber flew. The boy cried out, and the mask stepped closer. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. Luke, broken, answered. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. And then came the fracture. No, I am your father, it echoed, across the chasm, across the stars. Across the Force, Luke screamed, not in pain, but in collapse. Everything shattered. The blade, the past, his name. He refused, fell, chose death, or something close to it. But the Force caught him. The thread did not break. Leia felt him, as if through water, as if through blood. She returned for him, not knowing why, not knowing who he truly was to her. The twins were beginning to hear each other. Vader stood alone, watching the void where his son had fallen, and for the first time, regret, not weakness, not love, something older, a flicker of what was once Anakin. He returned to his master with silence, and the Emperor smiled. He will come to us. He will seek you again. The blade was lost. The hand was gone. But the truth had surfaced, and the war was now personal. Chapter 11. The Emperor waits, and the Jedi returns to Shadow's rise. One to end a war, one to end a soul. Time passed, as it always does, quiet and cruel, but the galaxy did not rest, nor did the darkness. The rebellion scattered and bled. The Empire rebuilt, stronger, colder, sharpened by vengeance. And in the shadows above all, the Emperor waited, not in fear, not in haste, in perfect, patient hunger. He saw the web tightening, saw the sun growing stronger, saw Vader begin to hesitate. He whispered to his apprentice, "Soon bring him before me. He is ours, and far from the throne." The boy returned, not as child, not as rebel, but as something closer to what he was meant to be, Luke Skywalker, clad in black, eyes sharper, voice colder, a blade at his side, green, newly forged. He had built it himself, not inherited, created. He had walked alone, trained in silence, haunted by prophecy, and hunted by blood. He came not with armies, but with purpose, to rescue Han, to face Jabba the Hutt, to step into shadow and claim his name. He faced monsters, faced temptation, stood before the pit of the Sarlacc and did not flinch. He was no longer running. He was climbing towards something vast. He returned to Yoda, to Dagobah, 2 questions unspoken, and found only an ending. The master faded, not in battle, but in peace. His body frail, his voice a whisper caught in fog. When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be. And with that, Luke was alone, but not empty. Yoda had left one truth. There is another. Leia, his sister. The final key, the final chance. Obi-Wan returned in spirit, not to guide, but to confess. He told the truth. Anakin was Vader, the fall complete, the man he once called brother, gone. But Luke did not believe in endings. He believed in return. There is still good in him. He said it not as hope, but as fact. The Force shifted. Luke turned his eyes toward Endor, toward the moon, the shield, the trap. The rebellion would strike. A final battle, a final gamble. But Luke chose a different path. He turned himself in to Vader. They met again, not with blades, but with silence, father and son, walking in shadow, words between them like swords left. Sheathed, Luke offered peace, redemption, the hand his father had once cut from him. But Vader looked away, spoke softly. It is too late for me, son. He wore the mask, but something within moved, cracked. They ascended to the Death Star, the new one, larger, darker, throned by evil there. The Emperor waited. He smiled like rot. Welcome, young Skywalker. I have been expecting you, and the game was set. The son had returned. The father stood beside him, and the master prepared the blade that would break them both. Chapter 12. The Throne Room and the Choice of the Chosen One. When all is stripped away, only choice remains, and that choice is everything. The Death Star pulsed like a wounded star, orbiting Endor, a second weapon, larger, hungrier, but deep within, beyond shields and legions, lay the throne, black, cold, carved in malice, and upon it sat the Emperor, Sidious's final master of the Sith, the one who ended the Jedi, the one who broke Anakin Skywalker, the one who now reached for the sun. Luke stood before him, a Jedi in all but name, calm, determined, but not immune. The dark pressed in. The throne room was alive with it. The Emperor whispered, mocked, promised, feigned kindness. Strike me down, fulfill your destiny. But Luke held, resisted. The Emperor smiled. Your friends will die. Your fleet is lost. Only your hate can save them. And in Luke's silence, he saw the storm. Vader stood still. Between them, a blade without will, a prisoner, a servant, a father who no longer knew what that meant. Then it began. The trap was sprung. The shield remained. The fleet burned. The rebellion faltered. And Luke cracked. The saber ignited. The duel erupted. Not as training, not as ritual, but as fury. He struck first. The boy, the son. He attacked with all the fire of his father, and Vader answered, red against green, past against future. Neither held back. They battled in shadow, in silence, each blow an echo of prophecy. The Emperor laughed, watched, fed. Yes, yes, let the hate flow through you. Vader drove Luke back, but not with joy, with sorrow. This was not triumph. This was collapse. They were mirror and mirror, wound and wound. Then Luke hid, frightened, panting, still holding back. Vader searched, called out. Not as hunter, but as father. You do not yet understand your power. And then he found the crack. If you will not turn, perhaps she will. Leia, the sister. The other hope Luke snapped. He roared, struck, drove Vader down, blade after blade in white fury. He severed the hand. Vader collapsed. The saber hovered over the fallen mask. The Emperor rose. Now, young Skywalker, strike him down and take your place. Luke trembled. The dark screamed for his soul. But then he saw the wires, the cut flesh, the severed hand, and looked to his own, gloved, hidden, the same. He stepped back, extinguished the blade. Never. I am a Jedi like my father. Before me. The Emperor's smile died. Lightning rose. A scream of hate he struck. Blue agony, crackling torment. Luke collapsed, screaming, burning, buying. You will die, the Emperor hissed. And Vader watched, torn, silent, split in two, the Sith and the Father. Then the choice, the moment, not prophecy, not fate. Choice. Vader turned, lifted the Emperor, screaming, crackling, his master, his god. He hurled him into the abyss, and the scream of Sidious echoed as the dark was torn open. It was done, the throne shattered, the trap broken, but Vader fell to his knees, breathing shallow, broken, burned. Let me see you with my own eyes. Luke removed the mask. Gently, slowly, beneath it, Anakin, pale, scarred, human. He looked at his son and smiled. You were right about me. And then he was gone. The Emperor fell, the Jedi returned, and the Chosen One fulfilled the prophecy, not by power, but by choice. Chapter 13, The Pyre, and the Breaking of Chains. He burned as a father. He rose as a whisper, and the galaxy turned its face toward dawn. The sky above Endor was no longer black. The shield had fallen. The Empire shattered across the forest. The rebellion rejoiced. Songs in alien tongues, drums of celebration. The tyrant was gone. The throne was broken, but not all sang. Not all danced. Luke walked alone through the quiet wood, carrying a weight the others could not see. Dot in his arms, a body shrouded in armor, heavy, silent, his father. What remained of him? Not Vader, not the mask, not the machine, but the man who had looked upon him with love, Anakin Skywalker. The funeral pyre was built of wood, ancient, unremarkable, but it became a temple, a sacred place, not to worship death, but to acknowledge it, to honor the journey, the fall, the return. Luke laid the body down with reverence, with sorrow, with peace. He lit the flame without a word, and fire consumed the past. The armor cracked. The darkness peeled away, and the smoke rose, not in mourning, but in release. He stood and watched, as fire spoke, as flame turned to ember, and ember to ash dot in the smoke. He felt a presence, not a ghost, not a memory, something older, the Force, restored, balanced, for the first time in an age. Elsewhere, in the deep places of the galaxy, the echoes changed. Inquisitors felt their blades grow cold. Imperial warlords looked to the stars and trembled. The shadow that had ruled all Sidious was gone. The will behind the terror snuffed out in the hands of the one he had enslaved. Anakin's chains were finally broken. not by the Jedi, not by the Sith, but by his own choice. Leia stood among the rebels, feeling something she could not name, a shift, a peace, and a loss she could not place. The blood of Skywalker was in her. The Force called to her, but her path would be different. Not saber, not temple, but strength of another kind. The twins had survived the storm, but the sky behind them still burned. In the night, Luke looked to the flames one last time, and as the fire died, he saw them, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and between them, Anakin, not in armor, not in pain, but young again, whole, bathed in light. The three who had shaped the war, now watching the peace, and in Anakin's eyes, gratitude, pride, and something deeper, release. The fire ended a story, but the Force never forgets. It only sleeps. Chapter 14. The Children of the War and the Seeds of New Shadows. From ash, roots grow. From peace, doubt returns. Even as light rises, the dark remembers. The Empire had fallen, but not vanished. Its body shattered, yet its bones remained scattered. Admirals clung to distant systems. Moons once ruled by fear breathed again, but in some corners a whisper lingered. The Sith were gone, yet the hunger they fed had not died. Luke returned not to glory, but to silence. He felt the Force not as fire, but as wind moving through ruins. There were no Jedi temples, no order to restore, only memory, only echoes. He was the last dot, and in being last, he became the first. He wandered the stars, not as warrior, as seeker. He touched forgotten tombs, holocrons half buried in desert tombs and drowned catacombs. He listened to ghosts. Some spoke in riddles, others in madness. All told him the same: there is no end. The balance requires rebirth. He gathered texts, fragments, names. He found places where Jedi once stood, now overgrown, erased by time and empire. He was building, not an army, but a seed. Leia watched the new republic form, but politics were not her destiny. She felt her blood stir. She knew what she was: Skywalker or Gainer, something between. She chose not to wield a blade, but the Force moved through her just the same. She led not as warrior, but as light wrapped in duty. Han drifted as stars do between causes, between battles, but he too carried legacy. And one day there was a child, a son, born of war, born of Skywalker blood, named Ben. He laughed in innocence. He walked in wonder, but the Force watched him closely, and in the deep, far beyond known space, a darkness began to wake. Not Sidious, not Vader, something older, forgotten, waiting. It stirred in cold systems without name, among cults who never forgot the rule of two, among fragments of the Sith who called to the void. Luke felt it, in dreams, in silence, a shadow without form, a whisper that did not come from the dead, but from something never truly alive. He knew that peace was not forever, that balance was never still, and that the Force was not finished with the Skywalkers. So he began to teach, not armies, but a few, the gifted, the lost, the curious, children with power in their blood, among them Ben, strongest of all. But burning to bright, Luke watched him with awe and fear. The war had ended, the tyrant slain, but in blood and silence, the next echo began. Chapter 15. The Temple Reborn, and the dream that turned to fire. What is built with love may be broken by fear. Even light, when cast too far, become shadow. In the green silence of an unknown world, Luke raised a temple, not of stone alone, but of memory, of burden, of hope. It was not grand. It did not echo with Jedi councils or Senate halls, but it breathed. It held peace, and within it the Force stirred gently. This was the rebirth, not of the Jedi as they were, but of what they might become. Luke taught them slowly, with reverence, with sorrow, for each lesson was a whisper from his own pain. He did not promise power, he promised balance, and balance is never without cost. They were few, bright-eyed, eager, children and seekers, brought from worlds wounded by war. Among them, Ben, his nephew, his brightest flame. The Force clung to him like mist, thick, unsettling, beautiful. Ben was power, but also fracture. Too much Skywalker, too much Palpatine's echo, too much unknown. Leia had sent him with fear in her breath. Han had watched him go with storm in his eyes. Luke saw in Ben what he once saw in himself, raw potential, raw danger. He loved him, feared him, hoped for him. He taught him as best he could, but some truths cannot be taught, only survived. The other students grew, learned peace, balance, discipline. But Ben dreamed. He dreamed of figures in shadow, voices that spoke in old tongues, temples that burned before he touched them. He told no one. Not at first. The Force within him twisted, hungered, whispered far across the stars. A presence stirred. It had no name, no breath, no form. It had waited since the fall. Since Endor it reached out through darkness, through dreams, and found Ben Dot. Showed him what he could be. Not balance, but dominion. Not restraint, but transcendence. And the boy listened. Luke felt it. A shift. A chill at the edge of vision. He searched the temple, meditated, reached out, and one night he entered Ben's chamber, drawn by a storm in the Force. What he saw was not a boy, not yet a monster, but something on the brink, and for a moment, a flash of fear, of failure, of stopping what might be before it was. He ignited the saber, and in that moment, Ben awoke. The blade vanished. The moment passed, but it was enough for a dream to shatter, enough for a temple to burn. Ben fled, broken, enraged, betrayed. The fire came after. The students, some followed, some died, some vanished. The temple became smoke. Luke was left in ash. The rebirth had ended. The last Jedi became the last again, and the dream turned to cinders. Chapter 16. The Rise of Kylo Ren and the Return of the Forgotten Master. Where a name is cast away, a mask is born, and in its silence the galaxy forgets what love once tried to save. Ben Solo was dead. He died when the temple burned, when the saber was drawn in fear, when trust cracked beneath weight too heavy to carry. What rose from the ashes was not child, not heir, not Jedi, but a shadow with a name of his own choosing. Kylo Ren, he wandered into the dark, not aimless guided. The voice found him. It spoke of destiny, of pain with purpose, of power long denied by cowards in robes. The voice was not a lie, but it was not truth. It was a wound given speech, a ghost of an emperor long dead but never buried. Palpatine's echo through Snoke, through dark science, through ancient rites and secret thrones. Kylo took the mask, took the blade, forged a name not inherited, but earned in fire. He became the fist of a new order, not empire, not republic, but something colder, stripped of memory, stripped of mercy. The First Order rose around him, metal, discipline, and fear. Not born in politics, but in trauma. Built not to rule, but to erase. Leia felt it, even light years away. The bond of blood did not break. She knew her son was still, within, buried, crushed, but not gone. Han refused to say his name. He wandered once more, not in rebellion, but in regret. Their love had failed to save the boy, and so they feared the man. Luke vanished. He fled to a world forgotten by maps, by stars, by time itself, not in cowardice, but in torment. He had failed. He had taught death. He had drawn the blade too soon. He sealed the Force within himself, closed his mind, cut his bond. He believed the Jedi must end. For where they rose, darkness followed. Where they taught, fire bloomed. Where they believed, they blinded themselves. He had become what he once destroyed. So he chose silence. But the Force does not forget. It stirred in new places, in scavengers abandoned to sand, in children with no name and no master. And somewhere, in Jakku's graveyards, it awakened again. Snoke took Kylo under his wing, not with care, but with control. He praised his strength, mocked his doubt, fed his hatred, not for enemies, but for self. He promised power, promised legacy. Kylo Ren worshipped the past, but twisted. He adored Vader, not the man, but the myth, the destroyer, the enforcer. He did not know that Vader's final breath was not rage, but love. The First Order spread. Worlds fell without battle. Some bowed, some burned, and Kylo became feared, even by those who followed him. He killed to silence weakness. He obeyed to mask uncertainty, but within conflict. A voice not Snoke's, not Luke's, his mother's. A whisper saying, "You are not this." And so the legacy split. Skywalker into hiding, Leia into resistance, and the boy into shadow. Chapter 17. The Scavenger and the Heir in the Dust. A spark. In the nameless, a legacy. The Force chooses not the worthy, but the necessary. She was no one, not born of counsel, not raised by family, left behind as if discarded by destiny. Itself her name was Rey. She lived among the bones of war, star destroyers rotting in the sand, walker corpses buried by time. She scavenged what the past had broken to survive, not to fight, not to lead, just to eat. But the Force had found her, not in temples, not in bloodlines, in stillness, in hunger, in waiting. She heard no voice. She saw no vision until the droid came, and with it, a map, not to power, to a man, a myth, a failure, a ghost, Luke Skywalker. The galaxy stirred. The resistance moved beneath Leia's will. The First Order answered with fire. Worlds burned, including Hosnian, a new Alderaan, a warning, and from that wound, Rey ran not away, but into fate. She met Finn, stormtrooper turned defector, another broken tool who chose to become human. She met Han, old, tired, unwilling, but kind, and through them a path opened, one she had not asked for, one she could not refuse. The lightsaber found her, not in choice in calling. It was Anakin's, then Luke's, then silence, now hers, and when she touched it, the Force screamed. Visions, fire, children slaughtered, a temple falling, a voice, Rey. She saw Kylo not as enemy, as mirror. The boy who chose rage, the girl who never had the choice. Their paths entwined like roots beneath a dead tree. Kylo hunted her, not to kill, to understand. He sensed her power, but not its source. He saw not a scavenger, but a threat. He offered teaching. She refused. He tore through her mind, but what he found frightened him. She was not trained, but the force rose within her like a storm. She fought and he bled. Rey searched for Luke, found him not as warrior, but exile. He would not teach. He feared what she might become, feared what he had caused, feared her power and its echo in Ben. But the force had not brought her. By accident, it had awakened, not to destroy, but to finish what Anakin began. Luke, bitter. Luke, broken. He tried to warn her, tried to end the line, but Rey saw truth, that light is not flawless, that power cannot be buried, that legacy does not ask permission. And in the silence of Act 2, Rey began to listen to the Force, to the island, to herself. But Kylo still called. He, too, was changed, alone, wounded. He had killed his father. Han Solo, the last tether to the boy named Ben. But the axe did not free him. It shattered him, and across the stars, a deeper voice watched them both, a shadow older than Sith, older than Jedi. It had waited, and now, through Rey and Kylo, its design moved forward, one born of sand, one forged in fire, both drawn by something greater and something lost. Chapter 18, The Throne of Shadows and the Breaking of Fate. All thrones are graves, all power borrowed. Even the chosen bleed before prophecy is fulfilled. In the unknown regions, where charts fail and starlight dies, a throne waited, not ancient, but eternal, carved in black stone, lit by no sun, fed by machines and hatred. At its center, the Emperor, returned but not living, breathing but not alive. Palpatine, Lord of the Sith, embodying what the dark side never relinquishes, survival without soul. He had not died, not fully at Endor. His body fell, but his spirit clung to machines, to rituals, to clones, to secrets, learned before time. In exile, he rebuilt the final order, a fleet born beneath ice, vessels without allegiance, stormtroopers bred in silence. A Sith cult worshipped him as God, as wound, as destiny. He whispered through Snoke. He shaped the fall. Of Ben, he watched as Luke fled, as the galaxy broke again, and now, with Rey's arrival, he moved. She was not what she thought, not scavenger, not nobody, but blood of his blood. Rey Palpatine, the truth, broke her. The name rotted her thoughts, her past emptied, her power poisoned. She had fought to be light, but now her origin dripped with shadow. Was she only what she came from? Was she the future of Sith reborn, or the one to destroy it? Kylo came to the throne room not as servant, but as man. Ben Solo, not mask, stood before her. Scarred, changed, he had remembered his father's eyes, his mother's voice, Luke's shame. He had killed his past, and now he wished to mend it, not alone with her, not in darkness, but through it. Palpatine watched. He saw the bond between them, a dyad in the Force, a power not seen in millennia. Together they could restore his empire. His life, he offered it, throne, legacy, command of the dead fleet. Rey refused. Palpatine turned, drained their bond, fed upon them as parasite. Ben was cast aside. Broken, dead Rey stood alone wounded, shaking, but the Force was never hers, alone. In that silence, voices not of Sith, not of kings, but Jedi, ancient, forgotten. Whispers of Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ahsoka. Anakin, they spoke, not in command, but hope. You are all the Jedi, and in her hands, Anakin's saber, Luke's. Now hers, she faced him, the Emperor. The rot, the source of Vader's fall. And she stood, not as heir, as end. Blades crossed, lightning screamed. The throne crumbled, Palpatine was undone. Ben rose, returned from the pit. Not Kylo, not Killer, just Ben. He reached her as she fell, gave his life for hers. No ritual, no prophecy, just love, and then gone, like his grandfather, Vader, to Anakin, Kylo, to Ben, a Skywalker, redeemed in death. So ends the last Sith, so ends the blood curse, the throne, now ashes, the prophecy, fulfilled, in silence.